Hey folks, welcome to Snowpal's Polyglot Software Development Podcast. In this podcast, we're going to talk about entrepreneurship. I just wrapped up a podcast with a guest where we discussed a number of things related to building a business. We're going to be sharing that pretty soon. So I'll include the links here. You can check that one out as well. It was a very good conversation. But following up that podcast, it was a quick enough one, at least to my standards in terms of the length. So I want to dig deeper into some of the items we discussed in that podcast and expand upon some of those items and add a few others to the list. So if building a business or creating a startup is something that that strikes a chord with you, or is it something that you're looking to do in the near term or long term future, then this podcast should hopefully be worth your while. So we're going to just talk about a few different things that creating a startup entails. At least, it entails a number of things. I'm going to walk through some of the things that we've personally experienced at Snowpal. So without further ado, let's actually get started. Let me do a screen share here. Give me a second. Okay, hopefully you can see my screen. Yep, you can. Let me actually go to, that's a different screen, so let me stop share and reshare. Okay, let me make sure I'm in the right window. It is, yep. Okay, cool. Let's see what it entails. I'm just going to try to illustrate this visually. Sometimes that actually ends up resonating better with a lot of people. Okay, there's a bug. InVision has a bug here, I think. Okay. Okay, let's walk through a list of items. I think I quickly jotted on points here so I actually don't forget. Let me make sure I can get to it. What is the first thing that you need? Well, this list is not necessarily in any particular order, but with that said, I'll just go through the order that I've listed here. Patience. Let me actually choose a different shape. Okay. It's kind of, you need to have the patience to wait for me to actually type this. It took like a good 30 seconds, so I think it's funny that the item itself is called patience. Anyway, so one of the first things you need to creating a business of any kind, I'm going to speak to it from my experience, which is obviously specific to building software. But this is true for any business, obviously. So patience is something you need tremendous amount of patience. However long you think it's going to take many times longer, maybe twice, maybe thrice, maybe 10 times as long. It just depends on you, what you're building, your market, your skills, your team, the money you have available to you, your experience, your skill sets, and a plethora of other things, and the market dynamics, macro, micro conditions. So a huge number of things, but enough said that you actually do need a ton of patience to actually be able to create any company. Let me group this. Oh my God. Okay, I'm actually demonstrating patience for you. I'm trying to group this. Can't seem to find where the actual grouping icon is. I haven't used InVision in a little bit, and this tool is actually going away. Unfortunately, there it is. Yep. Oh no, group it. Yep. Okay, I love this tool. I use it all the time, but it's not going to be supported anymore, so I have to find some good alternatives. Okay, patience. We said, there's a number of things I mentioned here in terms of money and your type, your audience, and whatnot. But you need plenty of patience. So either you have it by nature, it's innate in you that you're a patient person, or you're gonna have to find a way to build that in yourself if you want to be in the business of actually running a business. So that's number one. What's the next item I have here? Again, this is in no particular order, so it's going to be a little bit haphazard. My apologies for that. Um, Let me make note of the things I've actually completed here. Okay. The next item I think we could go with is, do you actually have a problem that you want to be able, that you're intending to solve here? So I'm going to draw a circle. I'm just going to say, uh, um, a real problem, right? So it's not so much manufactured. You know of a problem that you actually do want to solve, whatever that problem is. If you're running a restaurant, you are opening an Indian restaurant in a neighborhood that doesn't have one, and you feel like it could use one. So the problem that you're trying to solve is actually you're in the business of selling food, right? Food/service, Indian cuisine to folks in your neighborhood, and probably folks who are willing to drive and come to your neighborhood. If you're building software, as we are Snowpal, you're solving some concrete problems. Our web and mobile apps were initially built to solve a specific set of problems, which we actually extended at this point. Any project that you want to manage, you can manage on our platform. But when we started, we had a very specific problem, a slightly much smaller problem, but there was a problem domain regardless. So we tried to look for solutions. We didn't find one that at least that appeased us, so we ended up building one. So you need to ask yourself, you need to ask yourself and of your team, hey, do we know of a real problem that's there that we could actually help solve? So that's number two, because a lot of times just because you can build or create something, you probably may not want to do it because there may not be an actual serious need for it in the market. Well, product market fit, I'm kind of jumping the gun here. Before that, is there a real problem, is item number two, right? So I'm going to mark that item is done in my notes here. Number three, a support system. Let me actually go, maybe I can copy this. This is a broad term, support system, but I'll say what I mean by that here, at least in this context. And our company is located in the US. We live in the US. I'm going to speak to it from that context. So there's going to be some nuances and differences depending on what you're doing and which part of the world you happen to be in. But with that said, you need a support system that actually believes in whatever it is that you're setting out to build and solve. If you're opening a restaurant, somebody needs to believe that you have the skills again, I don't want to jump the gun because skills is a different item that I have here. You need to be able to lean on somebody because there are times, a number of times you're going to need that support. Whether that support comes from friends, family, or from investors. If you're looking for seed money and whatnot, you need to have somebody who actually believes in whatever it is that you're going to be doing, because you need a team to solve any problem meaningfully, and if you want to do it wonderfully, you just can't do it by yourself, no matter how smart you honestly might be. No matter how many long hours you sign up to work, you still need a support system. The support system varies and depends on the type of person you are and whatever it is that you're building and who you're building it for and how much money it needs, whether it's capital intensive, whether it's labor intensive, whether you're building it to your local audience or to a global audience. But you need a variety of people in the support system. And the podcast guest had mentioned that you need to keep the support system separated. And to that I mentioned, I took the example of George in Seinfeld, where he tries to keep the worlds separate, where he doesn't want the world, his worlds to be sort of conflated, if that's the right word. So you want to have a set of friends where you have certain conversations about certain things. You have a family to have certain other types of conversations. Maybe they're interested in some of the things that you're doing, maybe not all of it. So you just pick and choose, or you go to these conferences and meetings where you can find like-minded people to to share your grievances, if you will, the challenges you're running into, share your experiences with them, and learn from people, learn from their experiences as well, right? So you certainly do need some form of a support system, whatever that ends up being. What is the next item? Let me mark this as done as well. Okay, support system. Expect to spend a lot more time for a lot less pay. Okay, let me a lot of time for a lot less. I'm going to say expect okay. What I mean by this is, if you're doing a 40-hour, if you work for 40 hours a week, that's your work week typically is 40, 45, maybe even 50 hours. But let's say most of us, at least officially and formally, get paid for 40 hours if you're in the workforce. But when you're building a business, and if you're the creator, a founder, or co-founder, trust me, 40 hours is going to be very, completely inadequate. It might be 50, it might be 60. I mean, again, you need to have work-life balance, whatever that means to you, because that's again loosely used phrase or term. But it's fair to say, at least I don't know of anybody who spends 40 hours a week building a business. If you can't do that, you're blessed. You're much more blessed and a whole lot smarter than I am, which you anyways could be, but in the context of just hours spent, because it takes a lot of time to building whatever it is that you're building. Some weeks could be 40 hours, some could be lengthier, some could be shorter. You need to manage your time as best as you can. But if you're signing up to building a business saying, hey, I'm going to just clock time, work only for 40 hours, it's very unlikely. Now, again, there's always exceptions to the rule, to the exceptions to the norm. But in general, you're going to have to sign up to spend a lot of time. It could be 50 hours, 60 hours on an average for 6 months, a year, perhaps longer. I was reading the other day that folks who work at NVIDIA probably are working like, I don't know, like scary number of hours. I don't know how true that is, but I wouldn't be surprised if that is the case. Your company doesn't necessarily go from 1 trillion to 3 trillion within the span of 6 months if that were not to be the case, right? So that's something you have to be willing to do. Now, if you're the type of person who says, yeah, I like to be able to just spend 40 hours and I have other things to do, you could still be an entrepreneur possibly, but I couldn't give you any advice because I just don't even know what that means. Yeah. Let's keep going. I wanted to number this. It always helps when you actually number these things. So let's actually give it a number. Again, it was not in any particular order, so just take that with a grain of salt. Ungroup it. Actually, I'm going to delete this and type it right here so it's easy. Patience. This is why I don't type. I've gotten past this envision bug where text sometimes doesn't sit. I'm not intending to test your patience here, but apologies that I took a little bit of time there. Okay, that's number 1. This is number 2. Oh my God, there's all kinds of bugs. Okay, just going to give it characters so it doesn't. Okay, C, support system. D, okay. E is going to be money cannot be the only motivator. I almost want to even say that money shouldn't even be a motivator. Sure, you're starting the business to to make money, understood. But from a motivational standpoint, you probably don't want to have that. I think at least if, that's what my recommendation would be, because when you have money as the only motivator, things are surely going to fall apart soon enough. Because if things take time, and things are going to take time, remember patience number one. If money is the motivator, you're going to keep doing the math. You're going to think about sunk cost. Hey, could I have made more money if I did not do this, and if in lieu of this I actually continue to do whatever it is that I was doing? The answer to the question more often than not is going to be an emphatic yes. And then you're going to start questioning yourself as to why are you even doing this in the first place, right? So money cannot be the only motivator. Certainly not the only motivator. You may not even want to have it as a motivator. Sure, you want to make money, but don't list it in the in your list of in your motivational list. Maybe you want to add it, maybe you don't want to add it. At least that would be my 2 cents. Why? Because like I told you, it's going to take time. You're going to spend more time and effort and energy and your own investments into it. Whether you get seed money, whatever stage of funding you're in, or you're bootstrap funded, it's going to be money going in for a while before you start getting money out at some point. Okay, what is the next thing? Self-motivation. Yep. You are, if you're the type of person who looks to somebody else for motivation, there could be a bit of a problem. You certainly want to be someone who actually is not dependent on anybody else for motivation. So self-motivation. Because depending on how long this effort takes, and even if your first version is out there and you start making money, you're going to build upon it, make more and more improvements, and make it bigger and bigger. You cannot, you want to have a support system, but you cannot rely on that support system, at least not all the time, for motivation. You're going to have to find ways to motivate yourself, because any company, let alone a software company, I think any company is going to test the limits of all of your metal and patience and tolerance levels and whatnot. So find whatever it is that motivates you. Maybe it's working out, maybe doing more of this, maybe doing less of what you're doing for a few days, doing something entirely different. Maybe you go to a music concert, or whatever that is, whatever fits, whatever motivates you. Find it and then stick to it, because you're gonna need it. Trust me. So that was the next item. What should we go with? Yeah, entrepreneurship is this one was going to be probably the last one, but it's okay because I'm not going in any particular order. Not for everyone. In other words, and it's not a bad thing that it's not for everybody. It's actually a good thing, right? For you, because you have to enjoy whatever it is that you do. And sometimes you might realize that, hey, you know what, maybe this is not something I'm enjoying. The whole the gamut of what this brings to the table, what expectations it has off of me, is not something I'm willing to put in. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. When you're building a business, you're looking for great people to work with, and people who sign up to work with you, spending the time and effort and energy and valuable years of their life who believe in whatever it is that you're building. So you need great folks, great employees. So, and you yourself hopefully are or were a great employee before you decided to jump ships and start a business. So entrepreneurship was not for you at the time you were an employee, but things changed, your interests changed, and you found a real problem that you want to solve, and you believe you are able to do it. So you started the business, and now you've sort of become an entrepreneur. So there were periods of time, most of your life up until at that point, you were not one, and now you're one, which means entrepreneurship is either not for everybody or not for you at this point of time, right? It doesn't mean it's not for you forever. It's just not for you at this point of time. So that's something you have to discover. No matter how much research and due diligence you might do, this is something you may or may not be able to find the answer to till you've actually gotten your feet wet and your hands dirty. Next item. Let me mark this as done. the business that you're going to be in, it should be well within your area of expertise. That's absolutely imperative. So let me say H is in your area of expertise. Now, what I mean by this, I'm going to, you probably know what it says because it's clear enough, it's obvious enough, but I'm going to just expand on upon this. If you want to humor me for a couple of more minutes here on this item H, I've seen people who build a business because they want to make money, which perfectly valid and understandable. But in the pursuit of money and growth, they end up doing something that they don't have a lot of expertise or any expertise in. For instance, I've sometimes in the past thought about opening a restaurant. It seems like a fun thing to do. Now, do I have any expertise in that area, in that business? Absolutely not. I know that it's a lot of hard work. It's many, many, many more hours compared to many other businesses. Long, laborious hours. Well, that's the same case for software as well. But restaurants, I want to say that it probably takes even more effort. You start your day a lot earlier. You probably don't have a lot of flexibility in your work hours and whatnot. So there are differences. There's nuances that make it quite different. But if I start a restaurant, it's going to be a lot more challenging because I'm vegetarian, borderline vegan. So maybe I don't know if that restaurant would sell meat or it would be a vegetarian restaurant. If it is, it needs to make sense in the context of the locality and the neighborhood that we end up opening this restaurant, right? Uh, but beyond that, I don't know how to cook at all. I don't know what the challenges are in running a restaurant. I've never had one. I've never owned one. I've never worked in one of them. So, um, is it possible to create create a restaurant and be successful as somebody who's not done it before? Sure, but is it going to be like a whole lot more difficult than something else that I've actually done time and again, like building software? Absolutely. So I think my recommendation would be that it should be in your area of expertise because you're going to be understaffed for a long time. As a software company, we don't have the luxury as a startup of having a database engineer, systems engineer, a configuration manager, a deployment engineer, DevOps engineer, a DevSecOps engineer, a content creator, an architect, a developer, a tester, a product manager, a project manager, a CTO, CEO, CISO, CFO, and name all these roles. Can any startup afford all of these roles? I don't think so. No matter how well funded you probably are, at least not for a while. So you're going to have wear multiple hats, and which means that if you're starting a business that's not in your area of expertise, you are going to run into trouble because I don't know how to make, I don't know how to cook. Maybe I don't know how to, greet people when they come into the restaurant. I don't know how to manage accounts at a restaurant. What are perishable goods? What are non-perishable goods? How do I store them? What kind of health related forms do I have to sign up and get approvals for in a restaurant? You can do all of the research, but again, it's many different things you have to do, many different hats, and if you don't know it, haven't done enough of it before, you might be in a fair bit of trouble, right? So that's one. Okay, the next thing is uh, you have to understand that you are in for the long haul, right? That's super, super, super important. Not that any of these other items are less important. Uh, in for the long haul. How long you think, an MVP is a minimum viable product, but a minimum viable product has to be meaningful enough, right? To prove a point, you need to actually showcase things that are meaningful enough. And now that's challenging. That's very challenging, and sometimes it's more challenging for some people than for others. And for us personally, it was very challenging. We want to showcase a few different features, but we need a platform for that to sit on, and there wasn't a platform. So it took us a bit of time, as quick and as agile as we are as engineers. It took us a few months to build that platform before we could build the features that we want to showcase. That is actually a problem, right? I mean, it's a problem that you cannot avoid. Um, well, we try to help other people avoid the problem to the extent possible because we've published APIs and we continue to publish more APIs on API hubs. So you can build your solutions, whether you're MVPs or prototypes or actual production systems. You can run on our APIs, so we do all of the back end heavy lifting, so you don't have to do it. Now, we didn't have the APIs available to us when we started. And if you haven't discovered the APIs that you need, again, if you need one that we don't already have, let us know and we're happy to build something to help you get going. But you have to remember that you're in for the long haul. Things are going to take, like we said, a plentiful amount of time. So if you're trying to get something quick and dirty, great, but to socialize what you've built, to understand, get feedback, make changes, improvements, change courses, realize that what you've built is there's no traction for it. You have to do something quite different. All of that is going to add to this time. So if you've set a time for yourself, it better be a window that it is meaningfully wide enough or long enough for you to accomplish whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish in the context of what you're building. So you have to come to terms with the fact that things are actually going to take time. You need patience, and you're in for the long haul. That's an important acknowledgement that you have to have. What else do I have here? Sales. Okay. Now, again, a lot of us come to this with some skills, some experience, maybe a lot of experience, some level of expertise, but not in all the areas, right? It's just not possible. Now, as engineers, we started the company at Snowpal. We all of us are engineers, and we've learned other things that we didn't know, like sales and prospecting. So it takes a little bit more time for you to learn sales as a non-sales engineer, because you just haven't done that ever before. Much like it would take somebody who's not a developer a bit of time to become a developer, because they're either a product manager or systems engineer or sales engineer or something else other than a developer. Or if you're going from a developer to an architect, you have a more natural transition for the most part, at least for most people, depending on what you've done. But it's still it's something you learn more. What do I say? Organically. But there are other things that you have to learn not so organically, like going from engineering to sales is dramatically and seismically different. So sales is interesting, but super challenging. Prospecting, being an extrovert, reaching out to people, finding the right set of tools that work for you, whether you're going to cast a wide net or be very specific, go through a number of filters and do a lot of due diligence before you reach out to somebody, or you thrive on these automation platforms, sales automation platforms, which may work, may actually fall flat. We start out using them, spend some money on it, quickly realize that actually it didn't make a whole lot of sense for us, certainly not at this point of time. While reaching out to a lot of people, the more the merrier, but you also want to be able to reach out to meaningful people, otherwise you're just going to be wasting time. So sales, your experience with sales, or your interest, or the acknowledgement that you're going to have to develop an interest towards sales, all aspect of sales, whether it's B2C, B2B, prospecting, reaching out, walking up to somebody in a conference and trying to initiate a conversation, whatever it takes, right? It's going to, a company is going to expect, entrepreneurship is going to expect everything out of you, every single thing that you can bring to the table, and a thousand other things that you don't bring to the table, but it's going to ask of you to actually bring those things slowly but surely to the table. So sales, and your experience in it, lack of it, or experience you want to gain in it, or you have to gain in it, is super critical for your success. So we have, I think, 10 at this point, right? Oh, this is going to be J. Okay, A, B, C, D, E, G, E, F, G, H, I, J, right? We actually have 10 at this point. There's more we can go through, but maybe we can wrap this up just by saying a couple of more things, possibly. I think those were the items I had in my list. I did not have anything else jotted down, even as bullet points. Let me think. Can I think of some other things? Let's recap. Patience. Some of this might look like it has a little bit of redundancy, and maybe it does, but they are also distinct circles. Patience. You want to have a real problem that you're setting out to solve. Sometimes you know of a problem before you got started, or you decide, hey, I want to start a business, and then you're looking out for problems. In our case, we knew of problems that we wanted to solve, and then we build more, and as you start building, you find more and more problems that you are wanting to solve. Maybe I'll add one more item here. Um, do not build just because you can. I say this out of experience because getting our first web app out there was difficult. Getting our first mobile app out there was very difficult. Getting our first API out there was very difficult. But now, as we've done enough of it, we become a well-oiled machine as a company. It doesn't take us nearly as much time, and we are very, very quick. Even if I'm saying so myself, you'll be surprised how much we can build in a real short amount of time. But that is a double-edged sword because we end up sometimes building some things that are not things that we actually should even be building in the first place, and we end up doing it because we can. That's not a good thing because you want to use that time to doing something that actually makes a meaningful difference, and it actually is in your well within it's in your roadmap. Now, your roadmap doesn't have to be etched in stone. It certainly is not as a startup, but you had a reason to define the roadmap for that quarter or for that year. If you're digressing from it, you better have a pretty darn good reason why you're doing so. It cannot be just because, hey, it's cool to build it. Let me build it because I'm going to do another podcast, possibly in touching upon this point and expanding on K, which is do not build just because you can. Because the problem being a good engineer or having access to a good set of engineers, a good set of people, not just engineers, good talented people in your team, regardless of the domain of their expertise is the fact that they are going to be able to do whatever it is that you ask off of them well, wonderfully, and in quick time. And sometimes they may not even ask you why we are doing this. So if you haven't asked yourself that question, if they don't ask you, the team is going to end up building it, and then 6 weeks later you have something that's cool, but perhaps nobody wants it, right? Because you'd not do a fair amount of at least the least bit of due diligence that you should have done to find out if that was worth building in the first place. Support system, we talked about it, conferences, meetings, professional, personal, and whatnot. Expect to spend a lot of time for a lot less, meaning you can't, if you take the amount of money you make for a long time, you might not even make anything. But even if you do make some money and you divide it by the number of hours you spent on this effort on building, creating this company, that number is going to look abysmally small. You're going to have to now think you're actually not living in the US, probably living in a place that has a much lower cost of living to even justify it to yourself. I'll be honest with you, but that's it. It is what it is. So don't pay too much attention to what those hourly rates end up being when you're working for yourself. Money, we've talked about it, certainly cannot be the only motivator, and for a while it probably shouldn't even be a motivator. Self-motivation, try to find motivation in any which way you can. I'm sure your support system is going to provide some of it to you, but you can't rely on them to do all of it. It's your job to be self-motivated. It's not for everybody, at least not at every point of time. If it ends up being not for you, it's all right. You might go back to whatever it is that you were doing before. You just stay where you are instead of quitting what you're doing to becoming an entrepreneur, and there will come a more opportune time for you to becoming one. It's just maybe not the perfect thing for you to at this point of time. That's all that means, nothing more. It has to be in your area of expertise for reasons we've discussed. You have to wear multiple hats at the same time. It's going to take a lot of time, so you're in there for the long haul. Sales is something I mentioned here. It looks like it's sticking out as a sore thumb in the context of the rest of those points because it's just a singular word like a noun and not a sentence. But it's because we actually sort of underestimated the challenges that sales, whether it's B2C sales or B2B sales, would bring to the table. We've had plenty of learnings over the years, and we've shared a number of them or in a podcast and some as courses on our education platform. So, they're very affordable courses. You can publish your own courses as well. And we do a 50-50 split with you. If you publish your courses on our platform for the sales that we end up making for your courses, certainly do hit us up and we can talk more about it. Again, do not build just because you can. Build it because you want. I mean, the world needs it, right? There is a need for it. And again, if you're Apple, sometimes these $3 trillion companies, you can solve problems that are not really there. You're sort of creating a problem and finding a solution and making an impact. That's awesome. And even smaller organizations can do it and should do it. And we actually try to do it at Snowpal. But it's a whole lot more challenging than solving a more acknowledged problem that's out there. I think is a fair list for us to wrap up on. If you have questions, hit me up or hit one of my team members up. Before I actually end this podcast, definitely go to products.snowpal.com. It's going to actually take you to our parent homepage of some sort where you can look up our APIs, our podcast, our education platform, our managed services, and whatnot. Essentially, so this is a rich documentation that we have as a starting. We have plenty of documentation across the board, but this is a great starting point for you to sort of get familiarized or acquainted with us as a company. Um, I think that uh, essentially is it for this podcast. Hope you found some value in this. Until next time, bye bye.